Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. Night had fallen over Cedar Pines, a quiet town nestled between dense woods and the rolling hills of the Appalachian Mountains. The stars poked through a veil of clouds, shining dimly over the asphalt streets, glistening with the remnants of an earlier rain. In this remote corner of the world, a sense of security was woven into the fabric of daily life. Townsfolk spent weekends exchanging small talk outside the general store, while children raced bicycles down the long, winding roads. But beneath this serene facade, darkness loomed, hiding secrets lethal enough to shatter lives. On a chilling October morning, the tranquility was broken. The local sheriff's office, a modest brick building, buzzed with activity as deputies arrived for their usual shifts. Behind the front desk, Sheriff Tom Ellis reviewed a set of newly filed reports, unconsciously tapping his pen on the desk while his mind drifted into the humdrum of crime statistics. Yet a call received just moments later would plunge him, along with the entire town, into a spiraling nightmare. "Sheriff, you'd better come take a look at this," his deputy called from the back. The urgency in the young officer's voice carried an unsettling weight, one that immediately pulled Tom away from the base routine of his day. As Sheriff Ellis made his way to the evidence room, a gut feeling twisted in the pit of his stomach. He could feel the weight of something ominous, a foreshadowing of grave discoveries about to unfold. It was a premonition set to spiral into chaos, sending ripples through the safety of Cedar Pines. A calm that would soon be shattered by a crime that none would have ever seen coming. The victim. The photograph pinned to the bulletin board spoke of a life once vibrant, a smile that lit up the room, and a spirit full of promise. Her name was Lily Anderson, a 22-year-old college student studying environmental science at a nearby university. Friends described her as passionate, curious, and always ready to lend a hand, attributes that made her popular on campus and beloved at home. Each weekend, Lily would return to Cedar Pines, often diving into community projects and volunteering at the local animal shelter. She had dreams of making the world a better place, aspirations as expansive as the sky she cherished. Her disappearance just days before had sent waves of panic through the town. As the sun dipped below the horizon, a group of friends had gathered to celebrate Lily's recent achievements, only to find themselves swept into confusion and despair when she failed to return home. Calls and messages went unanswered. The nights grew heavier, a foreboding blanket of fear enveloping her loved ones. On the morning she was found, lying motionless in the shallow waters of Timber Creek. Officer Bates embraced Lily's devastated parents as they were escorted to the scene. Her mother, Emily, was frantically shaking her head in disbelief. Her eyes turned glassy, willing this nightmare to be undone. The hardest part was breathing in the cold reality. Their daughter was gone, and there would be no more laughter shared over family dinners, just fragments of memories now tinged with grief. As Sheriff Ellis stood at the water's edge, the sun began its ascent, rays shimmering off the surface, but failing to warm the frigid air. The scene was haunting. A young woman robbed of her future, laying amid the currents that coursed through a town gripped by sorrow. Somewhere in the shadows of Cedar Pines, a predator reality too bitter to digest. This was no accident. It felt deliberate, and as the tide pulled Lily's lifeless form further into the depths, so too did the investigation plunge into the darkness of desperation and rage. The crime scene. Timber Creek gurgled softly like a soothing lullaby a stark contrast to the pain that settled around it like an unwelcome shroud. The sun, moments ago timid behind a curtain of clouds, now poured its light with unforgiving clarity. Sheriff Ellis, flanked by Officer Bates, surveyed the chaotic scene, every detail etched in the forefront of his mind. The water sparkled around Lily's body, tangled in reeds and littered with leaves. Nature's indifference to the tragedy only deepened the atrocity of the moment. He crouched by the water's edge, keenly aware of the somber presence of the assembled deputies and forensic technicians, as they meticulously extracted evidence, collecting swirling leaves, fingerprints from nearby rocks, and fibers that might lead somewhere. The enormity of what had happened suffocated him. This case would not be simple. It would weave through elusive secrets, buried in a town that had always felt so safe. "Any signs of struggle?" Ellis asked, voice steadied despite the whirlwind of thoughts spiraling in his mind. Officer Bates shook his head, his own face taut with tension, as he pulled on a pair of gloves, preparing to document the scene. The lack of defensive injuries on Lily's body suggested she had been caught off guard, deprived of any chance to fight for her life. Nearby, a group of volunteers who had scoured the woods for Lily fidgeted, their eyes wide with horror and disbelief. Forensic teams cordoned off the area, blue tape fluttering like a fragile promise of justice that felt far away. The crowd murmured among themselves, trying to piece together events leading up to that fateful evening. Could it have been someone she knew? A manic stranger. As the investigators searched for answers, the air filled with anxiety, a weight that pressed down on Cedar Pines like an ominous cloud. Sheriff Ellis straightened, inhaling deeply, the earthy scent of wet soil mingling with the sharp tang of purple. Somewhere within these woods lay Cluise, a trail of breadcrumbs leading back to the one who so callously extinguished Lily's light. Time was of the essence, and he would not allow her memory to fade without action. As tragedy enveloped Cedar Pines, a riot of emotions coiled within him. He would channel that energy into finding the truth, no matter where it led. The early investigation. Within hours of the grim discovery at Timber Creek, the sheriff's office transformed into a hive of investigation. Whiteboards filled with notes and diagrams sprawled over the walls, while deputies resumed their steady rhythm of phones ringing and questions being asked. Sheriff Ellis felt the tide of urgency. With each passing minute, the threads connecting Lily Anderson to her murderer began to fray. The spotlight turned towards the community edge resident, now a potential suspect. Each known name a possible link in the chain of events that led to tragedy. Sheriff Ellis gathered his team in the cramped conference room, a stark contrast to the chaotic ambience beyond the door. Though the mourning citizens flooded the streets with whispers of support, their hearts were twisted in fear. He needed clarity, and sharing information was essential for the cohesion of the investigation. "Let's start with our last known whereabouts," he instructed, glancing at the map on his desk, a pin marking the Anderson residence, another for the university campus. Officer Bates presented a timeline of Lily's final day, detailing her attendance at an environmental club meeting, followed by a dinner with friends that extended well into the night. Her friends mentioned she was excited about her upcoming project, something about sustainable land use, Bates added, flipping through notes. "Note anyone who might have had a motive," Ellis said, scribbling reminders of inquiries to follow up on. "And reach out to her professors. We need to speak with those who interacted with her last." He paused. "What about security footage around the campus?" "They're reviewing it now," another officer chimed in. "Last seen leaving the diner around 10 p.m. As the hours turned into a long night, Numerous phone calls were made. Witnesses were tracked down. Evidence compiled, each thread weaving a clearer picture of the final hours of Lily Anderson's life. Each conversation carried the weight of the unsaid. Fear of sharing the wrong detail hung in the air like an oppressive fog. Despite a steady influx of leads, the process felt painstakingly slow. No one larger would harm such an unassuming soul. The clock continued its relentless march forward, each tick echoing the urgency surrounding Lily's story, propelling the investigators deeper into a world where secrets thrived and the truth swam just beneath the surface, concealed and shimmered like elusive fish in the murky depths of Timber Creek. The dead ends. As the days turned into a challenging week, Sheriff Ellis was inundated with leads, each more perplexing than the last. He realized that Cedar Pines, with its facade of innocence, harbored a labyrinth of complexities beneath its surface. At times, it felt like he was peeling back layers of an onion, only to discover another hidden core of mystery, each one bringing tears and frustration in equal measure. Interviews with Lily's friends yielded minimal results. The vibrant discussions they shared about sustainable policies and college life had now devolved into whispers of suspicion and disbelief. Some pointed fingers at a classmate known for his erratic behavior, while others suggested an ex-boyfriend still harboring feelings for Lily. Yet, none of these leads materialized into anything substantial. The accusations lingered in the air, leaving behind a residue of doubt and discomfort that made the sheriff's stomach tighten. Officer Bates stood in front of the whiteboard, frustration pouring from him as he tapped a pencil against his palm. "We've followed up on everyone in her circle. No one has a solid alibi for the night she disappeared. It all feels too convenient, or too elusive," Ellis added wearily. Several searches of homes yielded little more than mundane life clutter, hardly the signs of someone with a hidden agenda. Security footage from the diner proved unhelpful, showing her leaving with friends, but no clear indication of who might have followed her. The search at Timber Creek widened, hoping to find potential evidence of struggle on the far banks, but each probing step only deepened despair. The investigation reached a lull, the stench of stagnation suffocating. Rumors began to ripple through the town of Cedar Pines, fear morphing into paranoia. The residents were fracturing under the weight of uncertainty, and even loyal friends of Lily started eyeing each other with suspicion. With the case leaning toward the cold, Sheriff Ellis felt pressure mounting from family members desperate for closure, and from an anxious community unwilling to accept that danger may lurk just down the road. In the quiet corners of the sheriff's office, he wrestled with a gnawing doubt. Would they find the answer? Would justice be served? Time ticked away like the relentless echo of an unanswered question. And with each passing hour, Lily Anderson faded further into memory, leaving behind only a cacophony of anguish and unanswered questions. The walls grew closer, pressing upon him as he prepared to face the harshest truth of all. Sometimes the answers simply eluded even the best of intention. A break in the case, just when despair threatened to settle permanently over the sheriff's office. A faint ray of hope crept in. It arrived on a damp Thursday afternoon, the kind of day when the clouds hung low, muffling sounds, adding a cloak of gray to the world outside. A knock on the conference room door broke the silence, and Officer Bates stepped inside, his expression mirroring a mixture of excitement and hesitation. "Sheriff, you need to see this," he said, holding a file folder against his chest like it contained a secret too precious to be shared. Ellis raised an eyebrow, leaning back in his chair, his heart racing slightly. "What do you have?" "It's about the security footage from the diner. The tech department was able to enhance a segment we initially overlooked." Bates slid the folder across the table, revealing a series of still images snapped moments after Lily and her friends exited. In one of the frames, a shadowy figure lingered just outside the diner's reach, seemingly watching. The angle wasn't perfect, and the quality was grainy, but there was something repugnant about the positioning, the way the figure remained hidden, lurking like a predator. "Who is that?" Ellis asked, instinctively leaning closer to the photographs. "Here's the kicker," Bates continued, flipping to the last page of the folder. "A witness came forward earlier in the week, said they saw a man hanging around the diner frequently. States he appeared off. They found it strange how he seemed to watch Lily, even before that night." The sheriff's pulse quickened. He could feel the gears turning inside his mind. They couldn't just brush aside the peculiarities of that figure. Bates had already contacted the witness, a middle-aged woman who often frequented the cafe. With her description and the images, they now had a tangible lead, something they could pursue. "Get a sketch artist in here. Get a sketch artist in here. We need a composite based on her memory," Ellis instructed, already scribbling down notes. "And we'll put out an AP if we can identify this person. We might just uncover how deep this web goes." As the possibility of new leads invigorated the office, Ellis allowed himself a breath of hope. For the first time in weeks, it felt as if they were grasping toward something, a flicker amidst the consuming darkness. But the sheriff also knew the price of hope. What came next could shift everything, both for the pursuit of justice and the fragile fabric of Cedar Pines that had begun to fray. They would follow wherever the clues led, deeper into the heart of a perilous mystery that would demand resolution. The suspect. The sun sank lower on the horizon, painting the sky with hues of purple and orange as Sheriff Ellis and Officer Bates left the sheriff's office, resolve hardening their footsteps. The identity of the figure from the diner had become an urgent priority, a pulse in the ongoing investigation that begged to be addressed. With the sketch artist rendering freshly completed, they headed to the bustling town square, where locals thrived under the warm glow of autumn's embrace. The gathering energy belied the tension bubbling beneath the surface. Muffled whispers and glances exchanged as parishioners sensed that unsettling heaviness that had overtaken Cedar Pines. A name had emerged: Gary Hues, a transient known for his erratic behavior and history of disturbing the peace, especially around areas with college students. Bates flipped through the file, his brow wrinkling as he read. Several reports have come in about him loitering in the vicinity of the university, disappearing for days on end and then reappearing. He's been in and out of the local shelters, rattling nerves, but never charged with anything serious. The sheriff nodded, the weight of that information settling heavily on his chest. A suspect without bite lips zipped, secrets cloaked. Could he be the focal point behind Lily's murder? Such an idea cut through the crisp autumn air, accentuating the vulnerability their town had begun to feel. "It's time to pay Gary a visit," Ellis declared, his voice resolute. They tracked down his last known location, a small shelter on the outskirts of town, where whispers of his presence grew louder with each step. The building was unassuming, a faded red brick structure surrounded by overgrown weeds and an aura of neglect. Upon entering, the chill of despair wrapped around them as they approached the front desk. An attendant, weary but alert, recognized their intent. "He's been here," she confirmed, leading them to a dimly lit common room dotted with a handful of weary patrons. "But he left just a few hours ago. No idea where he wandered off to. Do you have any recent personal belongings? Maybe something in his locker?" Ellis pressed, his instincts kicking into overdrive. As the attendant rifled through a nearby drawer, a flicker of concern danced in her eyes. "I'll check." Moments later, she returned with an old backpack, and inside a crumpled note that bore Lily's name. It was half-written and unreadable, but the mere mention ignited a wildfire of alarm. Bates snatched it from her hands, the air electrifying with anxious gravity. "We need to find Gary." Moments later, sitting in the back of their squad car, Ellis could feel the walls closing in. The urgency shifted into a palpable sense of dread. They were on the precipice of discovering something countless townsfolk would wish remained buried. It all came down to this: Gary Hughes, the thread connecting patterns of violence, now hung heavy on their investigation. As they drove, he couldn't shake the feeling that the outline of a different reality was beginning to take shape that could change everything Cedar Pines knew and feared. The trial. The courtroom was filled to capacity, an anxious crowd swelling with anticipation. Cedar Pines had come to witness the proceedings against Gary Hughes, the man suspected of extinguishing Lily Anderson's vibrant light. Each face in the audience carried a mixture of grief, anger, and an urgent need for closure. The air was thick with an unspoken agreement. The community would not let the memory of their lost daughter fade without a fight. Sheriff Ellis took a seat at the front, fingers steepled, focused on the proceedings as the judge hammered the gavel down, silencing the murmurs in the gallery. He could feel the weight of all that had transpired pressing on his shoulders. A silent responsibility to present their case with relentless fervor. The stakes had grown too high to fathom any wavering resolve now. The prosecution opened with a heartfelt narrative about Lily, recounting her dreams and ambitions, painting a vivid picture for the jury. They highlighted Gary's history as documented encounters with the law, his transient existence, and the unsettling behavior reported by multiple townsfolk. Photographs of Lily were projected onto the courtroom screen, showing her bright smile and the life she should have led, each image igniting a new spark of indignation against the accused. As the trial unfolded, the prosecution presented evidence that led to a key witness, a delivery driver, who had spotted Gary near Timber Creek on the night of Lily's disappearance. The defense, however, countered with an argument of reasonable doubt, rendering Gary's actions as nothing more than the erratic behavior of a disturbed individual whose only crime was existing on society's outskirts. Hours turned into days, tense and draining. Sheriff Ellis sat, watching as crushing testimonies about Lily's vibrant spirit, pitted against Gary's disjointed life narrative, skirted through the courtroom. Each testimony was a dagger, and with every whispered word, the town's spirit hung in the balance. Finally, the defense brought forth Gary's estranged sister, a woman visibly shaken, but determined to stand for her brother. "He isn't a monster," she sobbed, her voice cracking. "He just needs help." Her words hung momentarily in the air, lingering like a bitter aftertaste. Yet the jury held fast to their collective conscience, deliberating long after the sun dipped below the horizon each day. Sheriff Ellis felt the gnawing doubt return. The scales of justice felt precariously tipped. What if they could not prove Gary's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt? Then, everything changed with the unexpected revelation of new evidence. A forensic analyst had examined items found in Gary's backpack, traces of Lily's DNA hidden within the fabric of a small torn cloth. It was a smoking gun that shifted the atmosphere entirely. And when the news broke, a gasp flowed through the courtroom, a collective intake of breath that hung there in disbelief. Days later, as the jury returned with a verdict, the tension was palpable. Sheriff Ellis felt every heartbeat echoing through the stillness. "We find the defendant, Gary Hughes," the foreman read, "guilty of first-degree murder." The verdict reverberated through the room, a sonic wave of relief and heartbreak binding the community together. Tears flowed as the reality sank in. It was the closure Cedar Pines had desperately sought, but also a harrowing reminder of what had been lost and of survival. As the echoes of the gavel marked the end of proceedings echoed, Sheriff Ellis inhaled slowly, the weight of justice mingling with sorrow. Lily's light would live on in the hearts of those who loved her, forever a beacon in Cedar Pines, a reminder of the relentless pursuit of truth, even when darkness threatened to take hold. The aftermath. Months had passed since the trial, yet the landscape of Cedar Pines had not quite returned to its former tranquility. The specter of Lily Anderson hovered over the town. The vibrant whispers of laughter faded. Familiar sights now bore the weight of grief. The community bore its scars like a homely quilt, stitched together by memory, resilience, and above all, a resolve to honor Lily's legacy. Sheriff Ellis often found solace within the four walls of his office, but even there, the unease persisted. Despite the conviction of Gary Hughes, the ache of loss lay heavy on the hearts of many. The sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating a daily meeting of his teammates. Silence reigned as they shuffled papers, lost in thought. "Things will change," Bates spoke at last, a voice tinged with cautious hope. "We need to rebuild trust, strengthen our community." His words sparked a glimmer of agreement among the deputies. They understood that healing would be a collective effort, one rooted in addressing the fears that lingered in the minds of the townsfolk. With newfound determination, Sheriff Ellis instituted community outreach programs aimed at transparency and support. Neighborhood watch groups began forming, residents leaning into the spirit of vigilance that had once been a hallmark of Cedar Pines before tragedy had struck. Town hall meetings flourished, restoring connectivity as citizens engaged in discussions on safety, mental health, and the importance of community. Yet even in the pursuit of rebuilding, Lily's absence was felt fiercely. Her parents, once pillars of strength, found themselves caught in the tumultuous tide of remembrance. Each family gathering imbued with the bittersweet reality of a chair forever left empty, a future forever altered. Slowly, initiatives emerged to keep Lily's spirit alive. A scholarship was established in her name, designed to support college students pursuing environmental science. It became a poignant tribute that bound generations, allowing her legacy to ripple through the lives of young minds eager to carry her passion forward. Every letter of acceptance sent home was a testament to what could be the impact Lily would always leave behind. At a local park one cloudy Sunday, the community came together for a memorial, a space once filled with the sound of children playing, now blooming with flowers, intertwined with messages of love and remembrance. Sheriff Ellis stood among them, feeling the warmth of connection rekindle among faces marked with loss. A moment of reflection washed over them, a collective inhale, releasing years of sorrow into the ether. As lives resumed, Cedar Pines began to shift. Mothers watched their children flourish under the stubborn warmth of the sun. Friendships found roots once more, and conversations bubbled with laughter. Yet within that laughter was an acknowledgement of the past, a recognition that darkness lurked but did not define them. In the ensuing silence, Sheriff Ellis knew his role had evolved, not just as a protector against crime, but as a guardian of their shared narrative, a custodian of memory, justice, and hope. And as he gazed at the blooming flowers, he felt the unmistakable promise of resilience flourishing in Cedar Pines, whispering of a future that remained undeterred and resolute in the face of all that had transpired. Reflection. As the seasons changed in Cedar Pines, the remnants of loss seemed woven into its very fabric. Sheriff Ellis often found himself reflecting on those dark days that had cloaked the town in despair. In the quiet moments of solitude, hidden behind a newspaper or bantering with his deputies, he would revisit the fragments of Lily's story, the profound weight of her absence pressing against his heart. He stood at Timber Creek, the gentle current now flowing with serenity. The water had transformed, but it would never erase the pain it had once held, the echoes of laughter that had been silenced, the vibrancy of life lost in a single act of senseless violence. Sheriffs are often portrayed as stalwarts of justice, but in those reflective moments, he felt the fragility of humanity's intersection of hope and despair tightly woven into his daily duties. The scholarship in Lily's name was a Bicona reminder that tragedy could inspire change. He took solace in the stories of young students who aspired to follow in her footsteps, the way they spoke her name with reverence, igniting a fire within those who sought to nurture the earth. It was a bizarre beauty, this intertwining of life and loss that lingered in the memory of a community. As he drifted further into introspection, he remembered how the specter of evil, once palpable, had transformed into something else, a resilience, camaraderie. Though the wound would never fully heal, it birthed a sense of purpose that enveloped Cedar Pines in an embrace of communal strength. The ties that bound them were now stronger than any darkness, anchored in the collective resolve to safeguard future generations. He realized that reflections like these were crucial. They would forever shape the sheriff. He had become one who honored both the past and the future, a guardian woven from the very fabric of his town's heart. With unwavering commitment infused with compassion, he would stand watch over Cedar Pines, ever vigilant and ever hopeful.